how exactly they look like being side to side. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to be trying out some transfer papers from HTVRont. I'm going to be trying out their transfer papers for light materials and dark materials. So this is going to be my first time trying these out. I bought these on Amazon and I got the 6-pack for each. I know they sell them in different packs. What I did notice with pricing, not mentioning specific pricing, this one right here for light fabrics is less expensive than the one for dark fabrics. So that right there is already a difference. So I know obviously one is for light fabrics and one is for dark, but I did want to give them like a little comparison just to see how they each work out, if they're the same, if they're different, and how exactly they look like being side to side. So besides trying both of these out and giving them a little comparison, I'm also going to give them a wash test. So stay tuned for the results of that. So if you're curious to see how these two transfer papers work out for me, then let's get started. Here we have the two transfer papers. So this one right here is for light materials and the back of it has orange font. This one right here is for dark materials and the back of this one has a blue font. So that's one way to tell the difference between these two. So I'm not sure if you can tell on camera, but putting these side to side, there is a slight color difference. So this one right here, the one for light materials, I feel has like a grayish tone to it. Can you see how it's not as white as this one? And then the dark materials one, that one does seem like it's more a true white and like straight up white. This one is just a little bit more muted and more grayish. And don't get me wrong, this one on its own, it just looks like white, but in comparison to this one, it does look less white. So just wanted to point out that there is a slight color difference with that. Not sure if it's going to make a difference, but just wanted to point it out. When loading these into your printer, always make sure that the logo is printed towards the back. And for these, I'm going to be using my Caesar Juliet to cut them. This is the design that I'm going to use. It's 8 inches wide by 7.6 inches tall. And I'm also going to do this little one right here. And for this one, I'm going to be putting it on the opposite side. So for the dark, I'm going to put it on the light. And for the light, I'm going to put it on the dark just to see if there's a difference there. So I'm just going to go ahead and send these to cut. Always make sure that the correct printer is set and make sure that the size is correct as well. This one is going to be obviously 8.5 by 11, which is a standard paper size. And for these, you do not have to mirror it, not for the dark or the light. Just leave it alone, leave it as is. And I'm just going to go ahead and send these to my printer. And always make sure to use best quality just so you could get better results when printing. And then for these, I'm adding them to the lower left corner of my mat. With the Caesar Juliet, it works on the lower left, which is why I'm adding it there. So I'm placing it on my mat, making sure it's really on there. And then in Leonardo Design Studio, I'm going to change it to cutting contours. This is where it's going to cut. It's going to show you exactly where it's going to cut. So for these, I'm going to use the cutter settings. And on my machine, I selected to use the Easy Weed cut setting. And then I'm just going to go ahead and send it to cut and just let the machine do its magic. Now onto the weeding. Starting off with the light materials one, this one was definitely easy to weed. The only thing I did have to be careful in the small sections because those little corners did want to stick to itself. So I kind of had to pull on them as I was weeding. And then when it came to weeding the entire image, that one was a little bit trickier. Those curvy sections did want to stick to itself. So with that, you definitely have to be careful and just hold on to your image as you're going so it doesn't stretch it out and work in small sections. But besides that, it weeded nicely and nothing was torn or messed up. Next, we have the one for dark materials, and this one was also easy to weed, but definitely way easier than the previous one. This one, for all the small little sections, the corners didn't stick to itself like the previous one did. So as I was weeding, it would just come right off and wouldn't stick to itself. And also, as I was weeding the entire image, the design was actually sticking to the paper, unlike the previous one that would kind of like curl and I would have to play around with it, hold on to the corners, do all of that. With this one, I would just pull on it and the design would actually stay put, so I wouldn't have to be as careful with it. It would just come right off. So for sure, this one was way easier to weed than the one for the light materials. Before moving on, I did want to show these up close just to see if you could tell a difference. So here we have the light materials and the dark materials. For this, focus on the bone portions. So I'm not sure if you could tell, but the dark materials one has more of a true cream white. And then this one right here, the light materials, looks more of like a muted version of that, like a muted cream white. As for the yellows, I kind of feel like they look the same, but looking at the corals, like inside the sunflower, this one definitely gives more of like a bright coral in comparison to this one that is slightly more muted than this one. And also for some reason, I feel like the one for light materials makes it look more pixelated than it actually is. This one just gives me a more truer picture than this one. This one kind of looks like it was a small image that was enlarged. So you know how it kind of gets pixelated and not as clear. But this one definitely looks like it's the legit size that it's supposed to be, and it wasn't like condensed or anything, you know? Now to actually get into pressing these transfers, you do have to peel them off. So I'm just gonna go ahead and peel them off the sheet. So for this one, I'm gonna be very careful because it's actually really stuck on the page. So I'm just gonna take my time. And you can't stretch these too much because then it distorts the image. I finally got it to work, and I feel like this one definitely took me some time just because of the design and how intricate it is. Now onto the dark materials one. Let's see how hard this one is to peel off. For sure this design made it harder to peel, but I didn't want to use a heat transfer mask for this just in case that messed up the transfers themselves. I wanted it to have a true test. But besides that, after this I'm for sure gonna use a heat transfer mask with any future designs that I have that are super intricate. 10 years later, but we did it. So for sure the dark materials one, since I guess I had to pull harder, it does curve in more. So see, dark materials, light materials, this one just straight up is flat. You see it curling right there. So that's definitely a difference. And I really thought the dark one was better because the edges didn't lift as I was peeling it off. But look at that, having the light one peel made my life easier. And I wanted to show them to you once again because now you could really tell the difference with the bones. You see that? This has more of a grayish tone than this one. This is more of like a cream, so definitely a difference color wise. Now look at the little flowers. Do you see what I'm saying, how the light materials is more muted than this one? So this one is just staying completely flat. Then we have the dark materials that's curling up, so we're gonna see if that makes a difference when pressing. So let's go ahead and move on to the real test. To start, I'm gonna prep my t-shirt with the lint roller and by preheating it. Then I'm going to use a t-shirt ruler 3 inches below the neckline to get an accurate placement. Now since this is a white shirt, we're starting off with the transfer for light materials. And both of these transfer papers do come with its own parchment paper, so I'm just going to place it over the design. And now I'm just going to press for 320 degrees for 15 seconds. And the instructions for this one said to wait 5 seconds and then remove the parchment paper. But as you can see, the parchment paper got removed on its own. So I'm just gonna take it out. So far so good. Now I want to do the sleeve, and for this one I'm going to use a pressing pillow. That way the seam underneath doesn't go through onto the transfer. So I'm just going to put this inside and then I'm going to prep it. And for this one I have to adjust the pressure because I'm using a pressing pillow. Okay, now for this one I'm going to be using the one for dark materials just to see how it corresponds with the light material. So I'm going to go ahead and press it the same amount of time. So for this one, you also wait 5 seconds to peel, but as you saw, the parchment paper rolled up again, so I didn't have to peel it. And now let me just go ahead and remove the pressing pillow. And there we have the one for dark materials. And as you can see, this one also worked out for the light material. Now onto the one for the dark materials. This one is the exact same process as the previous one, so I'm just going to go ahead and press it the same way. And for this one, you have to make sure that each part of the transfer lays flat because it does tend to curl up more than the previous one. So just make sure that when you use the parchment paper, it's completely making everything else flat. And this one has the exact same temperature and press time. This is another one where you wait 5 seconds, but as you can see, the parchment is curling up. So let's just wait and then just peel it off. And so far so good with this one. So let's go ahead and press the sleeve. I'm going to do the sleeve for this one as well, but the transfer is going to be for light materials. So I think that's going to be the real test, so we'll see how this one works out. So this one doesn't seem to lift on its own, so let's go ahead and peel it. Wow. So there's definitely a difference with this one. So as you can see, this one is definitely more muted and it looks like it blended with the black background. Let's go ahead and look at these a little bit closer and see if we can spot more differences. And here we have them up close. So both of these definitely feel like they adhere to the shirts really well. So this dark one right here, I don't know if you could tell, but it does have some outline on it. Obviously the outline is white because of the paper and it stands out more because the background is black. As opposed to this one right here, the white one, it probably does have an outline, but you can't tell because the shirt is white. So that's definitely one of the differences, but honestly that depends on your cutting machine. Mine just gave me a little outline. The cutting wasn't as precise, but it varies by machines. But besides that, I still feel like there's some color differences between between the two. This one is still looking very sharp to me. It's more of a clear image in comparison to this one. This one looks a little bit pixelated, but it does give it a vintagey look. So if you look at these, I still feel like the black sections just stand out more in this one. It just seems to be clear, and this one just seems to be a little bit more faded. I'm gonna do a close-up of the sunflowers just so you can see how in the white spots, they stand out more in the dark materials one in comparison to the white one. That one seems to blend in more, but for some reason the dark one looks more crispier and sharper. But besides all of that, they both definitely survived being pressed. But now let's look at the ones that were pressed on the sleeves, because those are definitely a different story. As you can see, the light one definitely works with the dark material, but the dark one does not work with the light material. Just look at that. It's just straight up faded, and it looks like it has a tint of black over it. I just feel like this one right here is translucent in comparison to this one. I feel like the one for dark materials has maybe like a white base to it, which makes the color stand out more in comparison to this one that is more translucent, which is why it's used on light materials, because you don't need a base for it, because it's going to be pressed on something light, so it's still going to stand out, and definitely not on darks because you don't have that base under it. So for sure you can't use the light ones on the dark material, but this one you can. But now that we got those comparisons out of the way, it's time for the wash test. So with every other HTVs or transfer papers that I worked with before in the past, you had to wait 24 hours before throwing it into the wash. But with these right here, it's a completely different story. You have to wait a whole 48 hours, so a whole extra day. So I'm gonna let these hang out for 2 days, and then I'm gonna throw them into the wash. The instructions for these say to turn them inside out and to use cold water, and then when drying you have to let them air dry. You can't use a dryer. So I'm gonna do that, and then we're gonna come back to see how they look. And here we have them after they've been washed and air dried. So both of these definitely still feel like they're very much on the shirt. None of the edges are peeling or lifting. But I will say I did wash both of these together. I know you're not supposed to wash white with black, but I just wanted to save time. And I don't know if you could tell, but there's definitely some bleeding in both of these transfers. I'm not exactly sure if it's maybe the dye from this, because this shirt is new and you know how sometimes dye transfers. But both of these have some bleeding going on. So this one right here mainly has black bleeding. So there you see some there. Definitely in these white parts right here, these words, even the bones have some sections that are black. Like it just looks like certain sections were holding onto something and it just stuck on there, because it kind of has like a pattern going on. You don't see any of the yellow, any of the coral. There's none of that bleeding. It's mainly the black. And this one as well, you have just little patches of black going on right there. And then this one right here actually has a blue going on. I don't know where the blue even came from, but there's some blue right there, right here. Even the bones kind of looks like it has some hint of blue. So who even knows where that blue came from? But I'm kind of thinking it might be the black sections, because the blues are kind of coming out. It's kind of like giving those black sections a blue outline. And once again with this one, the corals and the yellows didn't seem to bleed through, so mainly it was black. And even the sleeves are very much still on the shirt, but I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like this one looks even more faded. So I don't know if a lot of the bleeding got on it, but I just feel like it's even more darker now. It could just be my imagination. And then this one doesn't really look like it has bleeding, but I don't even remember what it looked like before, because there is some certain discolorations there. So I don't even know if that's how it was before or if it's a little bit of bleeding as well. But definitely this one is not as noticeable as the one in the front. So even though these didn't peel or get wrinkled after being washed, they did bleed. So I can't say that they passed the wash test. So here we have the shirts once again. Obviously we have the light and the dark. So let's forget about the washing for a second. Obviously I feel like they both definitely worked out. If you're looking for a transfer paper, both of these are practically the same. The instructions are the same as you saw. The only difference for me, I would say the color payoff. For some reason I still feel like the one for dark materials just has a crispier look to it. I hope you could catch it on camera. I'm not even sure, but I definitely like the look of this one better. This one right here, the image is not bad, but the image is not as crisp as this one. This one just gives it a more faded vintagey look. So like I stated, I do feel like this transfer right here is a bit translucent, which is exactly why it didn't work out with this one. So if I had to choose between the two, I would definitely have to go with the one for dark materials, because as you can see, I can use a dark one on a dark shirt and on a light shirt, but I can't use the light one on a light and a dark shirt, because obviously look at that, you can't use it. So I feel like you're getting more bang for your buck with this one, because it's multi-use. So you can definitely use it on like a black, a blue, a light pink, a white, on any anything because it basically works on any color, and obviously this one doesn't. Maybe you can get away with like light colors like a light blue or light pink, but once you're getting into like the royal blues or like reds, I don't think this will be able to work out, so keep that in mind. So now let's talk about the whole washing situation. So something that completely threw me off was having to wait 48 hours before wearing it or washing it. Like usually when you make something, you kind of want to wear it right away, so the fact that you have to wait a whole 48 hours is kind of like, damn, that's a whole 2 days, dude. That's a long time. I'm used to waiting just a whole day. Like, what's a day? It's nothing, you know? But 48 hours, I've never seen that before, which was kind of trippy. So that's why I kind of feel like, what if you kind of had to wait more? Because as you saw, both of these bled. So I kind of feel like the ink was maybe not dry enough even after the 2 days, because obviously, as you can see, there was a little bit of transfer of ink or something. I still honestly don't know if it was like the black itself that got onto this, but I really don't think it is, because the rest of the white shirt, there's no splotches of black, you know? And the shirt was inside out, so most likely it was rubbing within itself. It wasn't rubbing with anything else. So that's why I kind of feel like the ink was transferring within itself. And obviously some parts are black because the outline is black. So maybe I feel like the black is the one that actually was the one transferring. It was honestly surprising to see that the dark one did as well. And with this one, you have some blue going on. So I'm like, where did the blue come from? Obviously it wasn't the dye of the black shirt because the shirt is not blue, you know? So I kind of feel like it had somewhere to do with this. It's somewhere here. So who knows? But this one also got stained, and it kind of has like the bones kind of have like a blue tint to it. I don't know. I really thought this one was going to be the winner because I was having huge success the whole time. So I was like rooting for this one. I'm like, this one is not going to fail me. I kind of was expecting both of them to not lift or anything, and I'm glad they didn't lift, but obviously the most important thing is like the color payoff. So the fact that it got transferred with some sort of color is kind of sad, because honestly the success rate of these transfers weren't 100%. But I'm kind of feeling like I want to try it again, maybe give it a whole week to like set, like have the ink set, have it dry just to see what happens. I think I am going to do that just to see, because this one was giving me very high hopes. I'm like, this one is going to blow it out of the park. It's going to be so good. And look at that. Towards the end, once it got washed, it was like, just kidding. I'm not going to be a winner. But yeah, I really hope you guys enjoyed this little comparison, review, and first impression on these transfer papers. I know it didn't work out how I was expecting it, but definitely try them out if you're on the hunt for a new transfer paper, especially if you just need something for one day. If you don't care what it's going to look like once you wash it, then these are your go-tos. They're inexpensive, they're easy to work with, they press nicely. Just be mindful that you might have some bleeding after you wash it. But besides all that, I will have them linked down below if you're curious. Thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to leave me your thoughts in the comments, give this video a thumbs up, subscribe if you're not already, and yeah, I'll catch you in my next video. Bye!